So imagine we're sitting in a studio together. I'm going to be drawing a Frank Frazetta character as a master study in real time and talking to you as I progress, a bit like a companion studio session. So let's get into the video. Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. So I just wanted to approach this video a little bit differently because I do like to make some of my pencil drawing videos as time lapses and then talk over them and try and offer some story to whatever it is that I'm doing, or some value and some tips and advice and stuff. But I thought in this one I'm just going to talk over the sketch live as I go about drawing it. And I actually started this sketch, was it 3 days ago now? I think it was 3 days ago. 3 days ago in a sketching hour that I host, which is a meetup for artists that I've created on my community online, where artists can gather each week and we all hop on a call, and it's to help artists get back into the flow of regular weekly sketches again, without any pressure. And so far anybody can show up and sketch whatever it is that they like to sketch or want to work on and improve. And there's also, the option there to talk and engage with other artists at the same time as they're working on their sketch, their drawings and stuff. But I didn't want to mention that. I wanted to talk about this, what it is I'm drawing basically. And like, if anybody's familiar with old school fantasy art and fantasy artists, like even from this initial sketch that I had laid down from about 20 minutes, I think, on my sketching hour on Wednesday in my community called The Artist's Path, you might potentially recognize who or the style of this figure, like who might have influenced, or what kind of work has it been inspired by, or something along those lines. Maybe you don't, and that is absolutely fine. And this is a very early part of the sketch anyway. But basically, I decided to go ahead and do a master study sketch of one of my favourite fantasy artists growing up, whose name is none other than Frank Frazetta. And I had completed a Frazetta girl sketch recently, and it's actually on the opposite page. And I was going to make a video of the process of that. I mean, I could show it to you here in this video. I'll slide it along if I'm able to develop this drawing enough to a point that I'm satisfied with as a study. But my intention was to just do a sketchbook master study of it's like a section of a Frazetta. Pretty sure it's an ink drawing of his, and it's this woman, kind of like tribal woman, and she has a face off with this beast in the swamp sort of land area kind of thing. But I remember growing up and really admiring Frazetta's work, and always wanted to do studies. Like, I didn't know they were called studies back then, but just wanted to copy his work and try and learn from him and stuff. I was really impressed by his dynamic posing of characters and figures and contrast with the lights and shadows. He had very good sense of lighting and form, also like colour as well. I remember being quite impressed by his bold colour choices. But I also really liked the kind of fantasy world that he was creating. And you'd have these very beautiful women, typically portrayed with big wild cats, and I've always loved the big cats. They've been a favourite animal of mine. I've drawn lions myself, snow leopards. I mean, there's like, I've got a bit of history with creating some art with those myself. Like, I really like and appreciate these magnificent animals. And I felt drawn to Frazetta's work and was really, really impressed by it. And I think I mentioned that he was my favourite fantasy artist growing up. And I remember I would scan the internet looking for like high resolution images of his work that I really wanted to just download and keep in a folder, and I did. I managed to do that. I think they're lost on an old corrupted hard drive now, along with a lot of travel photos of mine. Maybe I can get that sorted one day and fixed. If anybody knows anything about that, I'd love to hear it. Please drop it in the comments, because I do have a lot of lost travel photos with corrupt hard drives. Anyway, so this for me is more of getting back into sketching again, and master studies and master copies are like one of my main go-to things. And I thought, do you know what, why not? I had been doing a bunch of digital life drawing classes not long before. I mean, they weren't specifically digital, but I did mine mostly in Photoshop for speed and convenience, and I was also transferring my figure drawing skills from traditional over to digital and see what I could come up with. So it was an experiment at the same time, and I really enjoyed it. So recently I had a little bit of a break from doing those kind of studies, and I thought it'd be quite nice to do some master studies where the figure is one of the main focuses of the artwork or the drawing. And so I decided to go and draw this Frazetta. So, yeah, like I was saying before, this is a different kind of video where I'm talking at normal real life speed, as if you were sitting with me right here, instead of doing a time lapse where I sometimes will write myself a script with certain things that I want to say, and I might be reading a little bit from that and then flowing with my own thoughts at the same time. Here, there is nothing like that. It's just purely me sketching in real time and talking. So just wanted to experiment with that format, and I'm probably not going to do any editing over mistakes that I make and stuff like that. I'm probably just going to post it as it is. Maybe it's like I don't know, like a podcast, a video podcast format or something like that. But be interesting to see if it attracts any fantasy art lovers, but also figure drawing people who enjoy pencil work and figure drawing and life drawing and all of these topics, these subject areas that are related quite closely. I'm just going to check the camera here. I'm not sure if I should zoom in a little bit more. Maybe I will change it a little bit as I go along. Make sure it's in focus. And yeah, so in this particular original image, I am just about to use, before I continue, my electric sharpener here. So maybe I will tune out this sound because I know it's going to be annoying. Some people might actually enjoy it, who knows? So this particular female character, is quite hard to make out her exact expression, because the original that I'm looking at, maybe it's just the version that I have, is quite pixelated, and I've zoomed in to the figure and the face to try and see what is going on, but it's very, very hard for me to see the clear lines, so I'm going to have to wing it a little bit. But the main shadowy shapes are there for me to read, and I would say that it's good enough for at least a reasonably quick pencil drawing master study, rather than something, you know, that I could spend hours and hours and hours on. I would want to get something like this done within an hour or so, or maybe 1 to 2 hours max, because there's not a huge amount of information. It's more stylistic choice and a little bit of the shading techniques that he's used. And I can see here he's below the breast and around the waist and the stomach and the bottom of the abs. He's using like a cross-hatching technique, so I'll get to that shortly. But he's got quite strong lighting in the hair, so it must have been an ink original, but I'm going to try to imitate that the best I can here, whilst talking, which is quite difficult. I don't know if you're an artist listening, and if you've ever tried to record yourself talking and drawing at the same time, like trying to think about what it is that you want to say, but also trying to concentrate on what it is that you're trying to draw at the same time, it can be a little bit tricky. I think it's probably easier with a pencil drawing rather than a painting, because you're eliminating the thinking process, the additional, I'd say, thinking process that goes into working out color choice, temperature, mixing paints. A lot of that I find you really need to be in a very solid flow state for. And I tend to listen to music that doesn't really distract the thinking process, that allows me to ease in a little and get right into the flow of painting, basically. So I'm just moving my eyes. I've got the reference material above and in front of me, and I'm looking at my own sketch here, and then constantly moving my eyes up up towards the screen where my original reference is. Maybe I can show an image of that reference on the screen so you can see what I mean, or a cropped version, because I'm drawing a cropped version of the original art. And he's got some very nice patterns in the hair. A lot of it is in deep shadow. It's a very thick, I mean, it's pretty much solid black on the original, And yeah, black and white, not much variation in terms of tone, and that must be because it's an ink original. Speaking of ink, I haven't done an ink drawing, I think, for years now. I did take part in the Inktober challenges before that were popping off on Instagram a few years ago, but I haven't actually done, I think, much ink drawing since that time. I think I did a couple of landscape studies with some ink washes before doing any watercolour and gouache, plein air painting study. I think I remember the last one might have been St Answell's Park, not far from where I live in England. But in terms of ink practice, I really can't remember what else I might have done and when. So it's been quite a while. But this is an interesting exercise. I'm still going about the drawing in a way that I would any other drawing. I mean, each individual stroke, I'm trying to draw in and make it evenly spaced and neat and tidy. And I do have to sharpen my pencil one more time. A little bit more. So I never actually used to use an electric sharpener. This is like, I think, the past 6 months or so, or maybe this year. When I got it, I saw another artist, can't remember who it was, who mentioned how quick and easy and satisfying it was, and it really is. It makes quite a big difference. I do still like using normal sharpeners too, so long as the blade inside is sharp. I'm using a Blackwing pencil here, and I do actually have a Blackwing sharpener, but I think the blade might be slightly blunted because it doesn't always create the sharpest tip anymore. So if I'm to continue, I probably need to get some replacement blades. But it was quite a nice sharpener to use, and it's dropped on the floor many times, and it's made of this metal, and it creates like this slightly curved tip which you don't get from normal sharpeners. So I really enjoyed it, and I would take it to life drawing practice when I would go. So I'm gonna try to fill in these larger masses of darkness on her hair, these large black shapes, but also trying to leave little bits of white for the highlights here and there, as Frazetta has done himself. And on the topic of master studies again, I find there's such a great thing to do. You know, when you're looking for something to draw and you're really not sure what to draw, and you want to draw something, you want to practice something, but you don't know what. But one thing you can do, which is instantly inspiring and gets you wanting to draw and paint, is to look at some masterworks, or at least artists that you really like, and works that you appreciate, and you can do these little studies of them in your sketchbook. Why not? I'm pretty sure that all of the great artists that we know probably did something very, very similar, and you're improving your hand-to-eye coordination, you're improving your sensibility to line weight and use of light and shadow, you're improving your choice in hatching or not hatching, contour, you're working on your mark making as an artist, as a draftsman, or as a painter. As I was saying, you're improving your... I heard Jeff Watts, I really like the term, use the term calligraphy. You're improving your calligraphy as an artist. It's either going to be your brush making or your pencil mark making on paper. And there is a number of things that contribute towards that. I almost got tongue twisted. And we have to consider the pressure, how light, how dark, what we're leaving out, what we're putting in. There are many things that we can learn from the greats before us. I've noticed here that there are some strands of hair that I've put in that aren't exactly in the same position as Frazetta's, but I've taken a design choice to slightly either exaggerate or change some of those shapes. Doesn't mean it's better, doesn't mean it's worse. It's part of the creative process, and you can go about these studies in a way where you're not trying to copy exactly everything, but you might even want to try to look to potentially improve something that you think should be there or could be there, certain marks or moving certain things ever so slightly. But then you might want to go about it in a way where you're wanting to achieve as high accuracy as possible to learn the maximum from the original artist as possible. And I've done that plenty of times. I've spent many, many hours on painting studies, quite a lot of digital painting studies, and really gone into like brushstroke detail. I've done that on some John Singer Sargent studies. Maybe I can flash one up on the screen. I did one of Lady Agnew, which I was quite happy with. It was a really nice copy that I did. It took quite some time. Can't remember how many hours, but it was a big effort and definitely felt like I'd learnt loads from doing that. And I think it's just always worth doing that whenever you can. Master studies, why not? If you're not going to do some kind of observational drawings or drawings from imagination, why not do some copies of artists that you admire and love? It's fun, you learn, you improve, hopefully. Just take your time with it as well, there's no rush. I mean, I do want to keep this video relatively short, so I am trying to move as quickly as I can, but also in a very steady, sort of calm pace, so I can also continue talking. And I have no idea how this video is going to come out. I'd love to hear what you think. If you like this format or not. Maybe you're watching my videos for the first time. I've got quite a few pencil drawing videos from a few months ago, but recently I was uploading plein air painting travel videos because I've been going on these adventures recently, taking my easel and visiting beautiful places in Europe and England, including a really stunning English castle, Arundel Castle, which isn't far from where I live, and taking my sketchbook and my paints and painting in these locations, and it's just, for me, it's incredible. And I really want to visit more of these places around England and Europe, paint and sketch. Maybe I can do some pencil studies as well. in these spots and take in the rich, deep, incredibly inspiring history that we have here in Europe, and particularly in Britain, in England, Scotland, the whole British Isles. To me, it's one of, if not the most magical places on earth. And I feel deeply drawn to the mythology and legend here, all of the stories that we have connected to the land. To me, I find it absolutely fascinating. And I want to do some art that pays tribute towards that in some way. And of course, explore all of these places, because I myself, I've been to 50 countries so far, but there's still plenty of English towns and cities that I haven't been to, which is a bit embarrassing to say. I meet people, for example, from places like Leeds and Newcastle, and I'm like, how on earth have I not visited Newcastle yet? Seriously, I've heard so many great things. Yeah, and there's lots of places like that. I haven't been to Cambridge or Oxford. I think Cambridge looks very picturesque. Could be really nice to go there and paint. Sometime soon, potentially. Anyway, I am going off on tangents here. I need to focus on the Frazetta study that is in front of me. So, coming back to getting in some more solid shadow areas. And I'm not pressing too hard, I'm just going over stroke by stroke, moving in the direction of the lines and the form of the hair. And I'm going to have to sharpen my pencil once more. Sharp enough. And going to continue. I might change the camera slightly for you, try and get like a slightly different angle, or slightly more zoomed out, and twist it down a little bit. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Let's see, where was I? Yeah, so I think I'm already about 25 minutes in, so I want to keep this to like a maximum 40-minute video. So I'm going to try my best to move on. Now, on her chest, she has these long black flowing strokes. Have I quite finished with the main bulk of the hair? Not quite. There's still some darker areas I need to fill in before I move on. I mean, the temptation for me when I'm working on drawings and paintings is to constantly move around the art as I progress, but sometimes when you're working in pencil and you're not using anything like a sheet of paper to stop smudging, it's usually good to move in one direction that isn't going to require your hand, your drawing hand, to lean on what you've already drawn too much, so you don't smudge your work too much by accident. And in this case, I think working from top to bottom is definitely, top to bottom and left to right is definitely the best approach here. So I'm just trying to move down, get these larger masses of shadow in. And speaking on Frazetta again, I saw a recent video actually to mention Jeff Watts again. I really like Jeff Watts and his content. He met Frazetta when he was really young, and I saw a video by him where he talks about the story of meeting Frazetta. Jeff Watts was doing I think he was displaying, he managed to get a booth at some kind of con in the US, some kind of show, and he knew Frank Frazetta was going to be there, and he tells the story of how he was like doing a Frazetta painting, and basically I think hoping to bump into Frazetta, and it's exactly what happened. And then Frazetta invited him to the museum, the Frazetta Museum, in person, and Jeff Watts was broke at this time as an artist, and it seemed like a crazy idea to travel across the country and go and meet him, but he's so glad that he did, because the experience for him was incredible. And he met Frazetta, and Frazetta invited him to stay, and I think had some wisdom for him as well, and some advice for his own art, and it just seemed like a really incredible experience. And I've experienced some similar things, not with iconic artists, but with people that I've met of importance or influence, and I've been invited to their house, and then once they meet you and they see who you are and they like you, you tend to get invited to stay as well, which is always a really nice thing. If you're a likable person, a pleasing personality, then these kind of opportunities can open up to you. But it also takes will on your behalf to, for example, make the effort in the first place to be in a certain situation that can be more conducive to creating an opportunity that it leads to an outcome that you'd really desire, instead of just sitting back and expecting things to happen to you. Am I going off on another tangent? Back to drawing Frazetta. So I need to make a move on now with finishing up some of these marks, but I'm trying to be accurate, but also get in these thick black strokes as well as I can. I wonder if it might be helpful as well if I put my camera from above and give you a view, a bird's eye view of my sketchbook. I'm just going to check how it's looking at the moment. Now in the original, she's only got one hand visible and there's not really much information there. This right hand has been cut off by a branch or a tree, and this left hand of hers, it looks like she's resting it on something. I have no idea what, and a finger sort of tapers off in a weird way. It doesn't look very natural. It's like the finger goes from flesh to bone. So I am just going to make it look like a normal finger instead. And I think there's a knuckle for another finger, and then the rest sort of disappears, and she's got her thumb here. Yeah, it's very interesting actually. I didn't notice that at first. Very unnatural looking hand. It's almost like twig-like. I wonder if that was deliberate, to reflect the character in some way. But it looks unnaturally thin and bony. Anyway, just gonna map in some of the contour of the arm. And I think I've got the proportions close enough. Let's see, some more of the black hair. Swooping down. And there's some white here that I want to make sure I get in. This is a tricky bit to shade because I've got this bending bit of hair that I want to keep in. Then carry on bringing that hair down, and then it starts to branch out into these strands, individual strands that create some very interesting design aesthetic across her torso, her chest. Excuse me. I'm going to have to sharpen my pencil again in a moment. Give you a warning when I do. Don't know if you saw my electric sharpener, but that's how it looks. Very handy indeed, worth having. And like I was mentioning earlier, right, I'm going to sharpen my pencil first before I continue. Like I was mentioning earlier, I do have this other Frazetta sketch, next to me on the opposite page, and I didn't record that talking like I'm doing now. It was just I recorded bits of it, I think. So if I'm going to make that into a video, it will probably be time-lapse with some music or me talking on top. Different form to this. This is a longer one, and I hope it's like people are listening. I'm going to be impressed actually if people are listening all the way. If you have done, please comment below, because I think this is about 35 minutes in. So really fair play to you. I appreciate that. And if you think it's worth me doing more videos like this, where I'm just talking from the heart, like I'm talking to you in the same room as me as I draw, then please let me know, because I will definitely consider making some more. But some people might just not have the patience to listen to this. But maybe if it's in, this kind of format where you can listen a bit, watch a bit, and continue listening to as you're doing something else in the background, maybe you could appreciate the video in that way too. I know I like to listen to art videos as I'm doing some other stuff, and sometimes you pick up little gems of knowledge or little bits of insight here and there that are pleasant surprises, and sometimes you can surprise yourself with things that you come out with. So I might even listen back to this myself, who knows. Right, so now I want to come in with some slightly stronger marks for her hair. And I know that the hair has dominated quite a bit of this video, I hope you don't mind, but I am trying to fill in the thick black shapes, as I mentioned, that look like they've been put in with ink and a brush. And even these strands of hair in this direction, they have some really nice shapes on the original, like flowing off, popping off, which make the figure look quite a bit more dynamic, like these swirling S shapes everywhere in the hair. It's like this wind is blown behind her. Adds a little bit more drama, I think, to the figure. Almost like these strands of hair are electrified or alive in some form, carrying an energy forwards, and that can be used as a compositional tool as well in a figure drawing or an illustration. I know I've done that in the past. There was a period of time where I was quite focused actually on fantasy art. This was before I went travelling around the world, and I did quite a bit of, it was mostly digital paintings, fantasy art images. I did one of Odin, the Norse god Odin, for a competition. That was, I think the judges were, I think Sparf, the artist Sparf was one of them, and who was the other? Greg Chang, I think. Doug Chang, I think. Oh God. I think it was Doug Chang. Well, I think I've gone past the 40-minute mark, so this could potentially be close to an hour. Let's see how it goes. But I'm gonna do my best to continue. But what was I saying? What was I saying? I'm just gonna sharpen my pencil again. That was it. I was talking about doing a fantasy art illustration of Odin, the Norse god Odin, for a competition. And at that time, before I set off backpacking, I was really into fantasy art and really, really enjoyed doing it. And I was doing quite a bit of live drawing as well. I was advised, work on the anatomy, which is very, very important for this kind of work. And there was a lot of study and practice that I had to do. And I would just lock myself away for as long as I could, working on improving my skills. I really, really wanted to get in as a concept artist in games at the time. And I still would actually love to do some work in that field, either in film or games at some point, some freelance work. But that was my focus after I came back from uni studying games design, and it was very closely related to fantasy art, the genre that I was looking at anyway. And I remember seeing these weekly challenges. There was a forum called Concept Art Forum that I used to go on and post my sketches and get, people would critique them. And yeah, I was really, really keen to learn and everything. And I'd enter these challenges and competitions. And yeah, with one of them I came third. And that was my Odin depiction from imagination. And I designed it from scratch, had a great fun doing it. My anatomy was definitely off, it looked far too rigid. But it was really, really good fun, and stepping into the myth and legend and everything, learning about it, I really enjoyed it. And maybe now that I have oil painting skills behind me, I can create some traditional fantasy art paintings or portraits and stuff like that. That's something that I always wanted to tap into. So maybe that is something to come. But for now, I have a character portfolio project based on King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake to complete at least one chapter. But again, I'm talking about something that isn't a drawing, so I'm going to return to the topic of this drawing so I can get it finished. Now, this lady doesn't have a top on, of course. Her hair strands are mostly covering up good part of her breasts. There's more strands coming down here in Frazetta's original, following the form, curving around, and then there's lots of strands of hair on the outside over here, bending round. And I think to try and get this sketch done as soon as possible, I am going to move away from the hair temporarily and move around the rest and see if I can get some of these nice hatching sort of marks in there on the anatomy of the pose of the figure. And I'm going to sharpen one more time. Might just check this eye. I feel like there could be a little bit more shadow in there. Just a little bit. And in this one. Okay, so on this left arm here, which is also covered by quite a bit of hair, there is some really nice hatching marks that I want to try to replicate in my version of the drawing, and they spiral around a little bit. It's a really nice kind of curve stroke that Frazetta got here, and they go all the way up to the top of the shoulder and the arm. And the hatching as well follows the form a little bit. I quite like that. And same in the breast. These strokes that move around the form that they're describing. And it's slightly darker in one section, one area, but it moves around. Just putting a few little more sharp strands here and there as I move around, as I notice them. In the original. And the torso is mostly in light, bright light, and there are some shadowy areas that I've already started to indicate here. I can move some of these erase some of these marks. If you can hear any people in the background, I'm in a residential area at the moment, so it is a Saturday afternoon here in England. Hopefully you can't hear too much, but there are some screaming children. So there's this fabric that is her clothing going over the crotch, and it has kind of shading. It's a strong line here, moving down. Before I dip a little bit too much here, because I've already started the shading, I want to indicate this arm. And there's some kind of like bracelet going on here. And like I was saying before, the hand kind of disappears a little bit. There's like a tree trunk or a very big part of the tree that's sticking out, and her hand disappears. And again, like the fingers, like an indication of the fingers look very, very thin, almost like needles. Very strange. Just an indication of a bent finger, I think. And yeah. another thing you have to be careful and aware of when you're doing master studies is that sometimes the artist who did the original, they have mistakes in there, like could be anatomical mistakes, and you want to be aware of that because it's not always going to be completely accurate, and you have to use your brain a bit too to think, okay, does that actually look right? Should it look slightly different? Like here, I'd want to draw through her hand and then the rest of her fingers and try to imagine what's going on. But they're not visible because of this tree trunk shape. That we have. And I think some of these, she's got these like swooping lines again that wrap around the form and bend upwards with a little bit of hatching in there. I really like how he's done the shadow here. I'm going to see if I can imitate it. There's a line of reflected light, but you get these strong, evenly spaced out lines that wrap around the muscle formations of the forearm. And generally speaking, Frazetta's anatomy skills are pretty good. Like I think he was doing a lot of it. Well, I might be wrong, but I think he was doing quite a bit of his artworks from imagination without looking at reference, but he probably was using some reference at certain stages of specific artworks, but for all of them, I'm not so sure about. I think he had enough knowledge that he was doing a lot based on what he had recorded in his memory as an artist. And that's why it's really important to do anatomy studies as well. I actually mentioned this in my previous video where I went to live drawing, in-person live drawing for the first time in quite some time. And it was a promise to myself a couple of months ago that I would continue doing at least some anatomy studies while I wasn't attending live drawing, because it's important to keep that knowledge up and to keep growing and expanding it as much as you can as you progress. So, in terms of information on the chest, I think I will start moving down towards the legs. There are some lines here that I want to include, swooping around the form of the lower abs, and then she has this material. And there's a strand that wraps around the leg. I might have to change the camera a little bit for you to get that in. And try and land this anatomy as close to Frazetta's interpretation as possible. I mean, a lot of people get put off by anatomy studies, but if you want to draw the figure, sometimes it can be really, really fun. You just isolate a certain part of anatomy that you know that you can't draw from imagination very well. I mean, you can test yourself first, find out, okay, I'm not really sure exactly how this certain bit looks, but you can go and look it up and do some studies and improve that gap in your knowledge. And that's definitely something I intend to do more of in the very near future. Now, legs are cut off in my drawing, but they're also cut off in Frazetta's, fortunately, by the swamp area that this figure is stepping in as she approaches this beast. So I think the cut-off point is about there, so I just about made it on the page. And this left leg is coming over, but there is also a little bit more of this right leg on show, so I just want to make sure I get that in. And then it appears the left leg comes over like this, and the knee and the leg, well, the knee bends and the leg's more in this angular position. And to just ever so slightly thicken up this thigh, just a little bit. And moving around the sketch a little bit more. There's some really nice shading going on down here, but I'll just finish mapping in the shape of this leg as it foreshortens away from us, bending into the distance behind her. So we have the cylindrical form of the leg that is disappearing, or receding, I should say, into the background. Just make sure that I'm getting this correct. And bringing in some of these lines now, these hatched lines, evenly spaced out, not applying too much pressure, and then you can just go over again and again. The material on her pants has this kind of folded texture, but it's also quite white on the top, so I want to remove some of that shading. Cut back and go back in. We're getting there with this, we're getting there. This is a longer recording than I expected. I'm just going to sharpen my pencil. Used up quite a bit of this pencil actually for this video, for this sketch. And just moving my eye around the drawing again, seeing bits that I can tighten up, clean up as I progress. And this material that drapes down a little bit, and then this hanging additional bit of material that swoops in. It's got this light side to it. And get the contour, and it seems like there's this strange background, like some kind of forest foliage or something weird that's behind her, that's sort of touching her sides and going over her body ever so slightly. Seems a bit odd. But maybe it's part of the jungle environment that she's in. Some kind of swampy trees that she's moving out of as she has a face-off with the beast, whatever it is, this monster. Okay, I am back with a slightly different angle from above, as I'd mentioned earlier, just to give a different point of view on the drawing, so I can finish it off for you, so you can see the whole thing, just to break up the imagery, because this is looking like it's going to be an hour-long video, which is not what I expected at all. But I don't know, maybe some of you will enjoy the video, and I'd love to hear it, because I haven't done a video like this before where I'm talking over quite a long period of time and real-time drawing and doing this kind of study work. So anyway, let's get back into it. So there is a little fruit fly, so please ignore that. He's trying to distract me at the moment by flying right over where I'm sketching. Anyway, I am going to finish up this leg area. I really like what he's done around the kneecap actually on this left leg, but first I'm going to shift over to the other side and try to get some of this shading in accurately that wraps around the form. Knees are fascinating to draw. They're such a peculiar looking thing, the kneecap, and when it bends and when it's not bent. And the interesting shapes and patterns it makes on the surface with different people's knees. But I really like how Frazetta has approached his here. Describes the form very well, it seems. This calf muscle, he really wraps these lines around, and I think even at a slight angle near the top as they come down. I really like that, how he's done it. I'd love to know the scale of his original drawing here that he's done, but it's very impressive. And this figure is actually, she's almost in the background of the drawing, of the ink drawing. So it must have been quite a large one. I was just sipping on a smoothie not very long ago. And he's got these deeper, thicker, longer, broader lines hatching over. And then a leg goes into the swamp water right there. Bang. And some very faint lines going in the opposite direction, but very, very faint in comparison. And then shifting over to the other leg. I'll just go over the contour lines a little bit more. Make her legs pop just that little bit more. And moving on to the left leg. And again, the shading, he's gone over such fine detail in moving the shading in the direction of the form, and this kneecap, which is coming forwards but it's also pointing downwards in how we view it, if that makes sense, if I'm making sense. And then there's this wrap around the form, around the side of the knee, that he's got really well. It appears that way anyway. So you have these vertical lines combined with this curve around the cylindrical form of the leg. Vertical lines moving in the direction that the leg is going, moving, or is in. And indication of the calf, and then these lines that wrap all the way around. And you don't really notice these things. This is like another reason, an example why these kind of careful master studies are so important. I mean, I could go into really trying to imitate each line, but the general thing here, even just glancing at it, you probably wouldn't really notice unless you're really carefully looking at the direction of the strokes that he's made on this figure, on the drawing. Like, you'd glance at it and the legs probably wouldn't get too much attention, especially the bottom of the legs where they vanish. And there's also quite a bit of shadow behind, like a swampy sort of background. But it's quite impressive seeing what he's done when you really sort of get close and analyse and pay attention to the movement of his line work on the figure. And I suppose this level of attention to detail is what makes these kind of artists really, really great as well. Things that would go unnoticed. And I'm just going to connect a little bit of the fabric here, and there's a slight indication of form turning here, but it's getting confused with the whatever's behind. There's these thick black background, very strange, almost as like hair, thick strands of hair, but it's not hers, it's this weird environment behind her. And just glancing again, there's some slightly darker areas. Not everything is equal in terms of the shading, so just going over some of these areas, reinforcing some of the structure, some of the lines. And I think there are some very faint lines on the outside, but not too much. I no longer need this, so I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to clean up little bits here and there. Bam, bam, bam. And, you know, I can, if I want afterwards, like, bring in a little bit more of the shadow of the background, which should make her pop a bit more, the contrast of the white of the leg and the dark of the background, the shadowy area of the background. And then moving up, back up towards her arm, before I do that, her hand. There's not too much information on Frazetta's original, so I am just going to go over bits here and there. I only I only anticipated to be drawing for about 20 minutes. I'm supposed to be doing some digital art at the moment, but I didn't want to leave this incomplete. So let's just get it done over the line. And hopefully this view from above is clear enough. I can't see what's on the screen of the camera. And hopefully it's still recording, because the battery was flashing red a minute ago. I should probably check. And I'm not too far away from finishing this up, I think, for a study. So coming back to our arm, I just wanted to correct a little bit of the form. And again, there's this black kind of outline, shape of the forest. Whatever it is, it's very strange. And it comes down beyond her hand, creating these interesting marks. And if you ever make a mistake and you've got a kneaded eraser, you can just very, very lightly, you don't have to press too hard, you can dab it over areas to remove some of the opacity of the line that you've put down earlier. You've got these sweeping strokes going around the forearm. It's not too much information, but a little bit. And then I couldn't resist the urge to not come back up here and define some of these sweeping hair strokes. These brands of black hair. Strands, I should say. Brands and strands. But I need to sharpen my pencil once more. That'll do. And just going to quickly go over some of the lines, make some a little sharper than others as I move around this sketch. And you know, I'm very, very close to calling this. I mean, she's looking quite angry on mine, to be fair, and it's not exactly the. I mean, it probably suits the fact that she's facing this beast. Like in the original, she looks very, very relaxed. Very relaxed, and I think if you're about to confront something that is a threat to your life, I don't know, you'd probably have a furrowed brow at least as an expression, so I'll just leave it. Some more strands of hair, and checking the contour. Is there anything else I want to add? Little bits here and there. I'm being careful not to lean over existing marks that I've made. And this is a really nice area of hatching to these done. Around the rib cage and the obliques, the latissimus dorsi, I believe. And And then it's a matter of, okay, do I want to bring in some of this shadowy area? I think why not? I'll put a little indication of it. It's going to be difficult for me to shade properly because I've got the tripod on my camera here, but I'm going to make an indication. Yeah, it's quite difficult. Can't get the full range of stroke properly due to my tripod being in the way and also my mic, but it's fine, it's not really that important. And there's these vertical lines going down here and this really interesting patterns, this area, the shadow. But yeah, that's pretty much it, I think, for a study. Can I call that finished? Is there something else that I'd like to add? Maybe just these final little strands of hair, if I'm careful. Easier said than done. I'm going to have to use a different pencil. And the fruit flies come back. Okay, final few marks, I think. Eyes are okay. There's a little bit of shading going on with the earrings and strengthen this contour a little bit. The shadows around the head. Actually, that doesn't need to be there. I'm not sure what that is or why I put it in there. Just cleaning up the fabric that she's wearing. And I think I'm pretty much done here. Oh, there was something else. This kind of pattern that goes around her leg. And there might be some kind of pouch or something over here. Quite hard to make out. But that is pretty much it. I know I keep saying that. It's a bit like when you're finishing a painting or a digital painting in particular and you create so many files. I used to do that all the time. Final version 1 all the way up to 20. Final version. That's brilliant because you can just create so many variations. You can just go back in time, which is pretty cool. Alright, so yeah, the study's pretty much done, and I think now it's just a case of, okay, okay, I can shade in a little bit of this background around her, this strange kind of shadowy background, just a little bit. And then I'll call it done. But yeah, there's like these interesting forms that wrap around in the shadows. I have no idea what it is, but I am just going to create a shadow shape. And it's good as well sometimes to, even when you're doing these studies, to step away from the sketchbook or the canvas and just to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of what you've done, because you might notice some things that you want to tighten up or further define. Before you call it done. I want to do these very straight lines, but I don't have the ability to draw them because things are in the way. So I think I'll leave that out of the question. And I think finish it up. I think I'll just leave the rest. I think that's fine. I will end it here, I think. Done. Thank you so much for watching this. Yeah, curious to know your thoughts. I know I went a little bit quiet towards the end, but if you like this kind of video and a longer format where I'm talking and you like to listen to something in the background, please let me know, because I will consider making some more. And cheers, see you in the next one.